Good afternoon, Bookfighters. It is Tuesday, August 7th. It's finally August, which means we can finally actually talk about Ender's Game. Except, I was gonna make my video about Orson Scott Card and opinions of authors reflecting your opinion on a book. And if that sounds familiar, it's because that's what Sarah made her video on this weekend. So now I have nothing to make my video about because Sarah pretty much covered everything that I wanted to talk about and I didn't have anything else planned. So thanks for that. I am glad that you made that video though, because that's one thing that has always kind of plagued my enjoyment of Ender's Game, because anytime I ever mention Ender's Game, there's always that one person in the conversation that's all like, you know Orson Scott Card is like a total homophobic asshole, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm aware. Back up. Like, personal space. Get away from me. I don't know why a hypothetical person was like so close to me. But that's what it feels like, because it feels like they're just like, they're insulting your intelligence by telling you this in such like a patronizing way, which always happens. I don't know if that's just the people that I'm around. But it's like, yeah, I'm aware. I am capable of separating a book from an author. I'm not sure if I talked about it in my last video. Like, I know I talked about it, but then I think I might have edited it out and I don't remember because I haven't watched it since I edited it. When I read Ender's Game in high school, the friend who gave me Ender's Game to read, we had that conversation about Orson Scott Card when I was like, I heard that he's not all that nice of a guy, and she was like, yeah, but the book is really, really good, and you should totally read it anyway, just like don't buy it from the bookstore, get it used or from the library or something. And then when I read it and we were talking about it and I was like, yeah, it's totally fine, and like, I don't really care about him, like the book was just good, and so we talk about the book, but then a few months later we were talking about like trading book recs and everything, and I told her that she should read Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice, and she was like, no, I'm not going to. And I was like, well, okay, well calm down, because it's not like Twilight vampires, which don't even get me started. And she was like, no, it has nothing to do with that. I like vampires. I've just heard that Anne Rice is a total bitch, so I don't want to read her book. And I'm like, you just went on this whole thing about how I should totally read Ender's Game even though Orson Scott Card is a tool, but you won't read my book because like you've heard things, like you don't even really know anything about her. And that's always bothered me, because that's not even just like a person-to-person bias like Sarah was talking about with Cassie Clare's books or The Host or whatever, where like your own personal opinion. That seems to be like the general opinion of like the literary community as a whole. Anne Rice has never been anything but nice to me online, and I've spoken to her a couple of times, just for the record. Name drop. They just completely shut out the idea, and I think that's really like ignorant. I mean, like, if you don't want to read them, that's fine, but not reading something because you don't like the author, like, that's almost one of the downsides of like the internet and stuff, and authors being on the internet, because on one hand it's so great to have an author so accessible nowadays. Like, you can just tweet John Green like, hey, I was reading Looking for Alaska and I thought this thing, and chances are he might tweet you back, or at least he'll see it, and you could have like a rapport with him about his book, and that's great. But then there's also all of this negativity where other people's opinions of the author or things that they've said that are taken out of context are then just kind of shoved in your face and skew your opinion of a person without ever having read their book. Which is a shame, because just think of all the great literature we would have missed out on had we known that like certain authors, like I don't know, I've never met, you know, Emily Bront or whatever, but like what if she was a total heinous bitch? That's probably a bad example because nobody really likes Wuthering Heights except me anyway. You know what I mean? Like, just classic literature, you didn't have that problem because people didn't know much about the authors. The authors were like anonymous, or they were just, that wasn't a big deal. So you took the book and based your opinion on the book solely on the book, and not necessarily your opinion of the author clouding your judgment of the book. So I'm glad Sarah brought that up. And see, this is the problem when I don't have anything planned, is I just end up rambling. I have no idea if any of that made any cognitive sense. I was just talking. Oh, there's one little thing that I wanted to like mention that I found actually really terrifying when I was researching Ender's Game, because like when I've read a book and stuff, sometimes I'll just go read the Wikipedia article just to see, you know, what's on there, if there's any trivia or something. And as I was scrolling through in like the critical responses section, there was a mention of how the US Marine Corps actually had Ender's Game on their recommended reading list. Just think about that. Ender's Game being recommended by the US Marine Corps for, and I quote, providing useful allegories to explain why militaries do what they do in a particularly effective shorthand way, and offering lessons in methodology, leadership, and ethics. That's scary. Like, I'm sorry, that's just scary to me. Hopefully this video made sense. I pretty much just reiterated everything that Sarah said with an added rant that no one cared about. I will see Kalinda tomorrow, and the rest of you I will see next Tuesday. Fare thee well, Bookfighters.